Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Triangle Area SQL Server User Group's Shop Talk. This is Shop Talk hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. I forgot which show we were doing tonight. Tomorrow is the SQL Server User Group Data Science and Business Intelligence meeting. So I'll do the other intro for that one. But for tonight, welcome to Shop Talk. We have with us two fantastic co-hosts. Over yonder, we've got Mala. How you doing, Mala?
Good evening, everyone.
And beyond the ridge, we've got Mike Christensen. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. I appreciate the angle. It looks like I have hair, and I will go with that.
The chinchilla is sitting very, very still tonight, so everything is good. So Shop Talk. If you haven't been here before, welcome. The whole idea is it's Monday. We're kicking back. It's after work on the East Coast. You're probably still at work on the West Coast, but that's fine. It's still good to be here. If you have questions, SQL Server related, data platform related, this is a good opportunity. You can get them in. Mala, Mike, and I sometimes have answers. Sometimes we tell roundabout stories in a way of trying to confuse a person into understanding something when we don't actually have the answer. So sometimes, we're pretty good at that as well. But we also have a couple of stories. Not the kind of story that involves a yellow onion and the Kaiser stealing word 20, but instead a story about, well, I guess it still involves the Kaiser. So the EU AI Act, this is regulation on artificial intelligence, and this comes from the European Parliament website. I'll also share a link that Mala put in our Slack earlier about a different article on the topic that kind of gives you another feel for it as well. So this was last updated in December of 2023, and this regulation is coming into effect pretty soon because they originally proposed it. The EU just lost. I mean, Anders, I don't know if you're going to be able to out-cynical me. I am going pretty hard on the cynicism for this one, but I have to lay it out first before I can really dig the knives in. So, April 2021, they had their first regulatory framework for artificial intelligence, and essentially are classifying AI applications by risk level. Sorry, go to beginning. So classifying things by risk level and then defining what kinds of activities are permissible and what activities are required and what activities are forbidden, depending on your risk level. So they break it into 4 levels. Unacceptable risk, high risk, low risk. They don't even mention the other 2, but low risk and no risk. So unacceptable risk. These are AI systems that are considered a threat to people, and they're just outright banned. So cognitive behavioral manipulation of people or specific vulnerable groups, like voice-activated toys that encourage dangerous behavior in children. I mean, basically, you just banned television. Social scoring.
Furbies, yeah.
Yeah, the Furby, exactly. All right. Favorite story. I need to look this up because this was a television show from the 1950s. I need to figure out which one it was. Soupy Sales, the green pieces of paper scandal. That's right. All right. Oh man, it's Snopes. I'm gonna skip that one, but it is true. So, Soupy Sales. That was actually 1965, not the 50s, but it was a joke in 1965. And let me pop this up right here.
It's a person.
What's that?
It was a person from...
Yeah. Soupy Sales it's this guy.
1926 to 2009. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. He was an entertainer on television for kids, and once suspended for asking his young television viewers to send him the little green pieces of paper that they can take from their parents' wallets. So yeah, it was an old joke, and nice pictures of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Alexander Hamilton, and send them along to your old pal Soupy, care of WNEW, New York. So, that actually was real, by the way. And 1965, it was a joke. It was a joke because this was really, you're talking about like 3 to 6 year old kids. But that's the first thing that I thought about here with this. That you're banning television now. Social scoring, classifying people based on behavior, social, economic status, or personal characteristics, because only the EU Parliament is allowed to do that. Biometric identification and categorization of people. So that would be something like, I was reading in a different article, real-time feeds that would identify a person, or even take a YouTube video and identify individuals in that video. And then actually also here, real-time and remote biometric identification systems like facial recognition. So these things, not allowed, except for the carve-outs that the EU has put in place, like military usage. So, they can use it for themselves, but nobody else gets to use it. Yeah, they have some exceptions may be allowed for law enforcement purposes. All exceptions are allowed for military purposes, according to the regulation. And real-time will be allowed in a limited number of serious cases, while post-remote biometric identification systems will be allowed to prosecute serious crimes and only after court approval. One of the things that they do not allow is basically precogs, if you're thinking Minority Report. So no capacity to probabilistically identify a person who is likely to commit a crime. High risk. These are high risk. These are in 2 systems. AI systems used in products. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
The EU crime or worldwide crime?
EU.
This is kind of like, okay.
It's basically, this is EU regulatory environment, which means for the rest of the world, doesn't matter.
Crime is very broad.
Yeah. Well, yes. So we could definitely get into discussion. Even within the EU, crime is very broad.
But you can't sell your product in the EU if it doesn't comply with all this, right, Kevin?
Agreed. Yes. So this would control any organization based in the European Union or selling products in the European Union. Technically, could involve anybody associating with somebody in the European Union, like what they have with GDPR. But then it becomes a question of enforcement. That somebody in the EU has said you're not allowed to do X. Well, stop me. You have no legal authority over me, and as a result, you have cases where no, we're just not going to do what you tell us to do because you don't have the regulatory authority. This is not a supranational government, at least to that extent, and as a result, there is the law and there is the enforcement of the law, and those two are not necessarily 100% overlapping.
Mm-hmm.
So, high risk: toys, aviation, cars, medical devices, and elevators. That's one set. If they fall into the EU's product safety legislation. The other one is if you AI systems falling into specific areas that need to be registered in an EU database. So, critical infrastructure, educational or vocational training, employment, private services and public services and benefits, law enforcement, border control, legal interpretation and application of the law. This one's a fun one, given the stories about, hey, ChatGPT, write my brief for me, and then it just starts making stuff up for you. It's a very helpful thing. I mean, usually it takes those paralegals a lot more time to write up fake information. So ChatGPT can do it much faster. All right. They will be assessed. Note the passive voice. I hate passive voice. I hate passive voice even more than I hate skim milk.
You hated? You hated passive voice?
No, I hate passive voice. And also hated wouldn't be passive. Because I am still the subject.
Sick burn
Yeah.
on me.
But it's like Ron Swanson in Skim Milk. I hate lying almost as much as I hate skim milk, which is water lying about being milk.
Community. No, wait, that's Parks and
That was
Rec.
Parks and Rec.
Yeah, Parks and Rec.
Yep. So anything that the EU marks as high risk, there is some sort of assessment. Who will do the assessing? Who knows? Somebody will do the assessing before being put on the market. Again, passive voice. That's twice in one sentence. Stop it. And also throughout their life cycle. So you have passive voice and you have mixing of tenses and you have mixing of plural and singular. So let's try rewriting this. Some bureaucratic organization will assess all high-risk systems before these AI systems show up on the market, and they will continue to assess these systems throughout the system's life cycles. There you go. That's $9,000. I'm going to build an EU for that consulting operation. People will have the right to file complaints about AI systems to designated national authorities, who will then ignore it completely. Transparency requirements. All right. Generative AI will not be classified as high risk, but will have to comply with transparency requirements. I see this as going as well as a bureaucrat trying to understand flight control software. Probably even worse than that, because the flight control software has means and ends. So you can at least understand the mechanisms and you can understand the outcome. With some tools and products, the means will be it happens, and the outcomes will be whatever the outcome generates. And good luck with that. So
breaking news. The European Union has 24 official languages. English, French, and German are the highest status procedural language. So it could be that French and German folks are writing some of this stuff.
It's
just a guess.
Quite possible. It's quite possible. Doesn't mean I'm not going to rag on him, though.
So how does one publish summaries of copyrighted data used for training, Kevin? How is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
How do you summarize the data you use to train that thing? Like you some kind of documentation tool that's clever and.
So that's a good question. And is that in the article here?
That's point number 3.
You're right. Publishing summaries of copyrighted data used for training. That would be something more along the lines of somebody deep within the bowels of the organization, of OpenAI, of Meta, of Google, of wherever, would have to put together an Excel spreadsheet that includes lines for all of the different types of copyrighted works, because it's a summary. So you're not expecting every single copyrighted title of a book that they used, but we put in a whole bunch of books. I'm sure that within the regulation itself, there's going to be more detail. I'm also sure that to the extent Meta, Google, OpenAI, and the like abide by these regulations, it will be as minimally as possible and probably with as much lying as they can get away with. Because, well, we've seen it with GDPR. So as a result, those summaries will probably say, we brought in a series of books from our partner, Springer, or our partner, Simon & Schuster.
Yeah.
Willful omission, not lying. Well, no, it'll be both. I expect
So
that.
this applies to people who also use other people's AI software into their products? Like suppose I
This
subscribe to some, yeah.
I would not expect. I would not expect you, for example. Let's say you used a GPT, you used Azure OpenAI. You deployed a GPT-4 model. You built a
Uh-huh.
web application that uses that GPT model to do whatever.
Yeah.
I expect you would not have to publish a summary of the copyrighted data because you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Instead, the original trainer of the model, whose service you are using, would have to publish it. If you trained your own large language model, so you had all of the necessary hardware and equipment to train your own. In that case, you would have to publish a summary of any copyrighted data that you used for training. And Anders has also made a good point here. You might also have to prove that you're using one that they approve of. So they may
Me.
approve of OpenAI. This is similar to, say, with HIPAA, you have covered entities, where I don't have to prove that your provider does everything correctly. They have to prove that they do things correctly. I just have to prove that I have an appropriate relationship with them and that they are a covered entity.
Right.
So it's similar to that where legalistically, like, yeah, I can't prove that Epic isn't violating HIPAA. What I can prove is we have the contract that says here's the expectations and the legal requirements around HIPAA. And so if Epic's breaking the law, we're not goading them on and doing it, or we're not misusing their product in such a way that violates HIPAA. But we couldn't guarantee that they don't. So you have that entity relationship. Mike now having to shut the door so that the people
Open
around
it
him don't
because
hear.
I'm like I'm in the HVAC Bermuda Triangle in this building, and so it gets to be like 80 degrees in this room.
So it's not lying if you spell it wrong. I mean, that's a good point. That's a good point. Then they can't control F it. You give them the 28,000 page version of it that just has a whole lot of gibberish. You make sure that you use Google Translate and translate it through 6 different languages. So English to Latvian to Thai to Moroccan to
Sumerian.
Portuguese to French to English. It's like, oh, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is perfectly grammatical English. So yeah, there's ways. There's ways. I mean, we are nothing if not innovative when it comes to finding ways around regulations. So the text is supposed to come into effect in April of 2024, but it will become fully in effect in April of 2026. There will be some parts that will come into play sooner. Like, we've got 6 months before banning of AI systems that pose unacceptable risks. Codes of practice start to apply 9 months. And rules for general purpose AI systems will need to comply with transparency requirements within 12 months. And then there's a little bit more in the way of what's going on there. If you want another article that kind of gives you a little bit more detail on some of it, this is one that Mala found that comes from Patrick at Alexander Tom. Yeah, Alexander Tom, GmbH. So, okay. Gets into details, table of contents, and tells us, hey, this is what is maybe a little bit more specific about the EU AI Act, and talking about the 4 sets of risks. I had it wrong. It's limited and low. So, exceptions to the law. What's that? No, so it's unacceptable and high, limited and low. Limited and low, they didn't talk about in the EU official press release. But covering organizations, all parties for development, introduction, sale, distribution, and utilization of AI systems. And by the way, I'm not gonna sass the English here very much because I'll bet you Patrick is probably German, given that this is a German company. All right. And also, Germans believe in passive voice much more than Americans and English speakers do. So, okay, serious thing, serious digression. In German academic writing, passive voice is perfectly fine. It is.
Wow.
It is something that they use frequently, and that does convey a level of knowledgeableness, I suppose, is the feeling that you get from it. Whereas in English, passive voice is you're trying to squirrel out of getting, like you've been caught with your hand in the cookie jar, and you're trying to weasel your way out of it. So mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. We're never going to define who made the mistakes, but so for that reason, German speakers, when translating into English, will use a lot more passive voice. And I am coming into this article already prepared for that. I've mentally prepared myself for this.
I got to reread Beowulf.
Well, Beowulf would be a totally different thing. But Beowulf's worth reading. You could reread it. You could read Orfaust. That'll also work. Okay. People, who is affected by the EU Act? See, fortunately, I prepared myself. I'm mentally prepared. All right, because the next sentence is also passive voice, and the next sentence after that. You would think that I didn't just jump off a ledge in terms of sidetracking myself with the passive voice thing. You'd think that I would have planned that out given the nature of the article, but no, I didn't. That was just spur of the moment. By the way, after having ranted about passive voice, I'd better make this comment because I figured it would be fair to make. And then there's a lot of passive voice here. Welcome to Shop Talk, where we talk about grammatical mistakes. All right. There is no turnover or user threshold for the applicability. Basically, this is Beowulf was Old English. Yeah, it was. That I was trying to vocalize that.
He's being very polite to say I was not on point. I'll correct it by talking about Faust.
Yeah, exactly. That was my passive way of doing it. Passive way of vocalizing it.
You're very charismatic. That's very good.
Mike, you're doing a great job keeping up with the snark. Full points.
I know. He knows too much. He knows too much, Mala. That's the problem. He knows too much.
So this passage that I've highlighted is really important because no turnover or user threshold for the applicability of the act. Meaning, every company. Doesn't matter if you have one person, you're a one-person garage shop. Guess what? You're under the rules. So, okay. That I think goes back to Andrew's point. Well, EU has lost the AI race. There are some exceptions. If you're using the system solely for scientific research, if you're using the AI system purely for household activities, or if they are used exclusively for defense or military purposes. So for those things, you can do what you want. One of the things I do like, I actually like the fact, the description. I think this is a perfectly reasonable description of an artificial intelligence system. And they have it here as a machine-based system that is designed to operate with varying degrees of autonomy and that, once deployed, can demonstrate adaptability and infer for explicit or implicit goals from the inputs it receives how to generate outputs such as predictions, content, recommendations, or decisions that can affect physical or virtual environments. So me making me and my best friends $1 million richer, that's personal use. I mean, I'd accept that. For $1 million, I'd take that. And 1 million is not that much. No, but it's a start.
Yeah.
Also for inflation, yeah. Also for, I guess it would depend on, which country the person reviewing your form is in. Like if let's say they're Greek. Well, €1 million goes a lot further in certain parts of Greece than it does in, say, the Netherlands or northern Germany. So, you just find the right approver and make a new friend, because a friend gets €1 million. And yeah, problem solved. So, all right. I do like this description, because one of the things that we have gotten ourselves into trouble with in this industry is nomenclature and misappropriation of terms. Data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence. People blur those lines constantly. And the proper concept of artificial intelligence is some agent that can act on information. An artificial agent, not a human, can act. It will not just return a response. This is more than a function call, but acts on information and applies some level of learning. So the agent part is really important for artificial intelligence. Machine learning, you don't have an agent. You don't have a concept of an agent. But you can take a machine learning model, apply the scope of an agent or a whole series of agents. You don't have to have just one. You could have a lot of agents interacting. And that is where we start getting into this notion of artificial intelligence. So we have the degrees of autonomy. And I would push that artificial intelligence is really getting toward more autonomy versus less autonomy in terms of how the agent behaves.
Right.
So an actor instead of an advisor. By that standard, isn't an autopilot AI? The standard is broad, and what things we consider AI kind of changes given the state of the art. So 40 years ago, yeah, fly-by-wire, those autopilots, that was something that people would lay out as, yeah, this is artificial intelligence. Today, probably fewer people would think of that as an example of what is AI. But I think that it is still reasonable if you have an agent that is interpreting information and performing actions on its own without the explicit approval or input from another actor, or from a human, from an outsider. And you don't need incredibly fancy technology to create an artificial intelligence. Eliza was an artificial intelligence in that definition. So Eliza, by the way, if you're not familiar with it, Eliza was the first chatbot that I remember. I don't think it was the first ever, but it was an early one. And so Eliza, this was built into Emacs.
Ooh.
So you could talk to effectively a behavioral therapist in
right.
Emacs.
You mentioned that.
And basically would just ask you, oh, so how does that make you feel? There we go. So you have this thing. This is a Rogerian psychotherapist. You have this thing that came out in 1966, and the first implementations or the first descriptions, and then you have implementations of it that have happened over time. So this particular one looks like Norbert Landsteiner put it out in 2005, but you can go back into the 80s and see iterations of Eliza.
Like Zork, kind of.
Well, Zork would just be a game. And within games, we still have this notion of AI. We have the computer player. The computer player in a game is an artificial intelligence, depending on how you put it together. If it's not a scripted set of rules and instead is a learning process, if you have a learning agent, that is an artificial intelligence. Crap, they just banned World of Warcraft. Well, yeah, you saw toys and games that affect the minds, that destroy the purity and of precious bodily fluids. We're
Yeah,
on Doctor Strangelove
I'm with
here.
Mala. Like what?
I just decided to go full.
Is that a wow? Is that a wow
Yeah,
reference?
this episode
No,
is hilarious.
that was Doctor Strangelove.
Oh, all right. I gotta look that up.
Yes, the general. That was his. That was his concern. That fluoride, the Ruskies put fluoride in the water to sap Americans of their vitality and their precious bodily fluids.
I will watch it because I've been watching the $6 Million Man, and the parallels to the current time are eerie.
Well, I can't say I remember many episodes of it. I remember watching it. It used to be on USA in the mornings, so sometimes holidays when I didn't have school, I could watch it and just enjoy the sound effects.
It started in 1974, so I think it's probably before your time and mine too. But
It was in reruns.
I got some
syndication.
of it and I rewatched it. Right, and I've been rewatching it recently as a grown up, and I'm like, oh, this is some heavy stuff. Like that's going on now, you know.
So yeah, you may or may not want to watch that. I don't know. You be the judge.
Well, so why aren't we all bionic? Like, it's been 50 years. I don't know. Too
Well,
expensive.
Mala is. She's got glasses. You are. You've got glasses.
I got glasses,
Yeah, you're a
but
cyborg.
I don't have a bionic arm that can like has the strength of a bulldozer
No. But
yet.
however, oh boy, I was just about to make a joke about Olympic runners and realized that would probably be the end of shop talk. So there was a
Oop,
controversy.
Okay. Don't do that.
Yeah, there was a controversy about people who had leg replacements. So you have the bionic legs, basically. There was a guy who was
Like
trying to become an
Pistorius,
Olympic.
Sorry.
Yeah,
You keep going. I'm gonna be
yeah.
quiet.
So there was a guy who was trying to become an Olympic runner, and the Olympic committee said, "No, you are not allowed to compete because your artificial legs would give you an advantage that normal runners would not have, such that, well, your legs wouldn't get tired. Like, well, he's still got hamstrings. He's still got quadriceps. And the legs are backwards. It's kind of a disadvantage." But that was a whole thing. This was probably a decade or so ago. But yeah, you got artificial legs, artificial arms. And like Andrew says, maybe you do have it and just hasn't been activated yet. Have you paid the $6 million yet?
Well, you gotta
probably
get a
still got-
subscription.
Yeah, it's a subscription service.
It's $6 million per year
Well, that's for the diamond tier.
for the Apple. Yeah, for the Apple Store.
Yeah.
Well, one of the points they made, not. I mean, I know I'm diverging, and I'll get right back to it. But like,
How dare
one of
you?
the points they made. Yeah, it's shop talk, right? So one of the points they made is, okay, Steve Austin has been repaired, and he has biological legs and one biological arm, so his heart only pumps for half of a human being, so like it's more efficient. So I don't know if this is true, but like when you're talking about an athlete that might have one leg that is artificial, they might have a higher rate of oxygenation of their blood because they have less tissue to oxygenate.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't know.
Right.
I'm just saying that I literally just watched that this weekend. So
Deep
was like,
thoughts
oh,
with Mike.
okay.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know if someone in chat knows. If someone in chat knows.
I have known you since 2018, and I have never stumped you, so I feel very proud.
Okay, so we have again here, unacceptable risk. Predictive policing, no dice. Real-time biometric identification, no dice. Targeted reading of facial images from the internet or video surveillance systems to create facial recognition databases, no dice. Conclusions about people's emotions in the workplace.
That's really funny.
Yep. Mala, when you filled out your TPS reports this week, you looked 14%
TPS.
more somber. We're going to have to dock your pay as a result. You're not wearing
Well,
enough
they do track-
flair.
They track people's clicks and stuff at a lot of companies now. I've met people that make bots that like automatically click stuff when people go to the bathroom because they get monitored so closely.
Yeah. So yeah. Apparently, those are unacceptable. You cannot use them in the EU until somebody ends up using it and just not telling anybody. And I'm afraid you're going to have to come in on Saturday. Exactly. You get it. You get it. NanoDB gets it. High risk. Areas of biometrics, critical infrastructure, education, employment, law enforcement, yada, yada. And they do require compliance with strict obligations. So certain obligations here, if you're carrying out a risk assessment of fundamental rights, so I guess you can check off how many of them you've stripped away as a result of your AI system. That way, it's sort of like gamification, where like, can you take them all? Can you catch them all? Meta can you? All right, training and support for staff responsible for monitoring high-risk AI systems. So you're going to give them the 1950s slideshow style of, this is Jimmy. Jimmy is our newest AI researcher. Watch as Jimmy does whatever, and it'll end up being a safety video from the 50s. I see a huge market
it's
for...
not a PhD, it's a high school grad or something.
Yeah, well, Jimmy will be like 12 years old because it's a safety video from the 50s. So you always have the little Jimmy 12-year-old kid who's learning about whatever. This is how we butcher cows, or this is.
Let me run under my desk. There's going to be a nuclear explosion.
I see a huge market for AI to trap those companies using AI. The question would be if that would be considered high risk, or if it's against the politicians, it's unacceptable risk. If it's just against other companies, it's probably just high risk. So, also keeping logs. I don't know what those logs would entail. I don't know who would ever go through the logs. I don't know if the logs have to have any specific details. I could see malicious compliance here very easily. I could also see, oh, that wasn't in your logs. Well, golly, we must have just...
I have a solution for you. You know how much it costs?
$12 million. It's 2 Steve Austins.
I actually did the math, and today's dollars $37 million.
That's actually not that bad. I mean,
I know. I thought it would be
Jeff
like
Bezos,
I thought it would be at 200 million or something.
Yeah, if you're Jeff Bezos, would you pay $37 million to be able to lift a car with one hand? Of course you would.
Easily.
Like Mark Zuckerberg he's trying to work out to do that. So that's the chump strategy. No, you just buy on a car.
You grew a beard just to do it.
Yeah.
And you already have it, Kevin.
That's true.
Is that really true, Kevin? He's training to lift a car with one hand?
Well,
he's been working out to get fit.
Yes. Yeah, he's
I mean, working to get fit is something, but I don't know if this is the same thing as trying something crazy like that.
No, well, he was doing UFC style fighting for a little bit.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, limited risk. If you're in the limited risk category, so this is the stuff that the other article didn't really get into. He's trying to prove that he's not a robot. Yes, he is trying to do things that meat bags will do as well, as he is a human, just like the other meat bags. Definitely not a robot. So limited risk, chatbots and deepfake generators. So they have less stringent obligations. If you deploy them, you must inform users that they are interacting with an AI system and also label these things as being generated by AI. ideally in a way that other people can easily remove using the AI auto remover, which, by the way, is going to be absolutely a thing. You will have the AI watermarking, and then you will have AI dewatermarking. I guarantee that'll happen. Probably going to be the same company, too. You're still on mute, though, Mike. Uh-oh. I think Mike is
You can see
shut
my
down.
expressions of me talking and all right, so this is a sidebar. So like when I go on YouTube sometimes there's these AI clearly like Pandavision, Lord of the Rings from the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys have seen stuff like this. And I hate it because it's all AI, but it's not tagged as AI. So is this trying to address that, or is it more ambiguous than that?
It is trying to address that, and it's also trying to be a first step in the how do you know that photographic or audio evidence is actually evidential or evidentiary in nature. So how do you know that something is real and not just artificially made up after the fact? Which, by the way, is a real problem with phones today. Think about your
Right.
Google phones are advertising as, oh, we'll automatically remove people from your backgrounds. We'll automatically touch up your photos. Well, if you're using that photo that you took with your phone as evidence that maybe somebody was robbing a bank and you snapped a photo of the person as they were running into the bank to rob it, then their lawyers can say, okay, well, what photo editing software was used on that phone? Well,
Right.
none, except that Google automatically does the processing. So Google has photo editing software. Can you prove that Google did not modify that picture in such a way? What did the original photo look like? Well, I don't have the original. I just have whatever came out of the editing process. And as a result, there's a serious legal question around newer phones and the extent to which there is the ability to have that show as evidence in court. Andrew says, well, that's illegal in the EU unless you get approval by everybody in the picture. Right, and the bank robber, they only occasionally grant you permission to take photos of them. So
Just as much as Justin Bieber signs autographs. Yeah.
yeah, so the bank robber will get off because, well, your photo editing software obviously changed it to look like him instead of who the bank robber clearly was. But you'll go to prison because you didn't get the bank robber's explicit approval to take his photograph as he was going to rob the bank. And you're going to ask, well, hey, if I needed his approval, doesn't that mean that he was in the photo? And no, it doesn't have to make sense. Go to jail. So today's sponsor for Shop Talk is the movie Brazil, which, by the way, if you've never seen the movie Brazil, it's very dour, depressing, and messed up. Aha, but I have a negative for my old 35 millimeter. 35 millimeter old style cameras will absolutely work. If you have the negatives, you can say it came from this camera. The camera produced this negative. Even the positive that you have, you could still say this was the process that happened to generate the photo. There was no editing of the photo outside of the photo processing, and then here's the negative. So for purposes of evidence, that's fine. There's no question about that. And even slightly older phones, you're talking like 5-year-old phones, before you had automatic touch-up, automatic camera operations, that's where things start getting interesting legally.
I'm a little nervous because I remember seeing Damien Omen, and there was a whole thing about like a spear hitting somebody, and it was like, all right, it's just me. This is just my fears. Sorry. Sidebar.
That'll happen.
You granted your fears, Mike.
Fear is the mind killer.
Don't
Mike.
watch that movie. Do not watch Damien Omen, the original. Do not. If you don't like horror movies, don't do it. There's 35 millimeter evidence of bad stuff happening.
That's fair. That's fair. So that's what we've got for EU AI and all kinds of sidebars and rants. Don't watch that movie. Do watch the $6 Million Man. I think we've got that covered. Couple of upcoming conferences. Upcoming conference number 1, SQL Saturday Richmond. Because we're not going to have a SQL Saturday this year in the RTP area, I will promote SQL Saturday Richmond. May 18th, in person, Richmond, Virginia. Anders will be there. Let's make sure Anders is there. Anders is there. How about that? And look at it with the plane as well.
Oh, he spelled his last name wrong.
I see what you did.
That's a Danish joke. My last name is Christensen with all E's.
And yet it's not pronounced that way.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that's the part that got me. This is why it'll be Mike Christensen as the introduction for the next 4 years until I have enough episodes where I pronounced it correctly to outweigh the episodes where I mispronounced it and he never corrected me.
No, you've nailed it.
I will have a double session because...
What?
Yeah. So they're letting me do the full-length version of Perfectly Normal, an advanced primer on normalization.
Oh, how wonderful, Kevin. Oh, I wish I had known before.
So NanoDBA will be in Richmond. Excellent. Looking forward to seeing you there. Yeah, this one's good, and I'm glad that they let me do that. I submitted 3 of normal length ones, and I said this one, like, hey, you're gonna let me submit a double length one? I'll do it. You roll the dice, you see what you get. But as you can see, it's not going to be a huge event. You got 5 tracks and going throughout the course of the day, but good event. Richmond always does a good job.
What's Anders speaking on?
Anders
awesome.
is talking about from flying to SQL, one accidental DBA's journey. So
Interesting. Oh, I'd like to listen to that. Oh,
that
I've
sounds
heard plenty.
suspiciously like a SQL Bits talk.
Maybe, yeah.
Or one submitted for SQL Bits for this year. And Lars will be talking. Actually, this is Lars' session in case you did not make it to the TriPass main user group on last Tuesday, where Lars was in person. This is the session that he did in person. So you get to see it there. All you have to do is drive 2.5 hours. No big deal.
We can carpool.
Yep.
All right, May what?
May 18th. Saturday, May 18th. And my legal twin, my other legal self, will also be there. And apparently he's presenting while I'm presenting the second half. So Jonathan Stewart, we're legally we're the same person. We can celebrate.
Legally, you're the same person. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
legally we're the same person. We can't prove that one of us isn't the other because we're always in the same place together. So
So you guys have gone to a lot of stuff together and keep bumping into each other.
No, I knew they were friends, but that is something. Oh, wow.
You don't. Your names aren't similar like me and Andrew.
Well, like 6 years from
That's
now,
all right.
6 years from now, it's going to turn out that this will be like a Fight Club scenario, except that I'm going to be Brad Pitt and he's Edward Norton. So, all right, SQL Saturday Richmond. Go check that out. We can celebrate May 17th on Friday.
I'm also going to take a minute to say something about the mental health day that we normally run from the Women in Tech group, but this year I hand it over to Tracy to run, and she's having an event on May the 10th, a virtual event with a nice lineup. Not all of them are SQL people, just nice people who have good things to say on stress management and stuff around mental health at work. So please attend if you can.
That is awesome. Thank you. Wow.
Eugene is going to be there.
Yeah.
And Kevin Klein as well. So yeah, looks like check that out. Also, I just learned about this. There's a conference, AI in Production. This is going to be in Asheville, North Carolina on July 18th and 19th. It's a 2-day single track conference. There is a call for speakers currently open. So if you are interested in the conference, these are 30-minute sessions. Yeah, 30-minute sessions for in-person presentations, Asheville, North Carolina, talking about artificial intelligence in practice. And the guy reached out to me earlier today, so I figured I would drop a link to that in Shop Talk. And go check that out. They will actually pay you for showing up if you are a speaker. So for a full talk, I'm not sure. I'd have to check to see what the full talk versus not full talk is, but they're using pay-per-call for the call for speakers. So yeah, check that out as well. And we got 10 minutes left, which is probably enough time to talk about our last article, which comes from Bleeping Computer. And this one's a fun one. By fun, I mean annoying and angerifying. GitHub comments abused to push malware via Microsoft repo URLs. And it's got nothing to do with Microsoft. It technically has a little bit to do with GitHub. But I'm going to ignore Lawrence's initial sentence because that's a little bit...
Passive.
No, it's not passive voice. Wait a minute. Actually, it is passive voice. Dang it. All right. Well, that's reason enough to avoid it. All right. This flaw could be abused with any public repo on GitHub. And they've seen it so far in Microsoft repos because, well, you've got a lot of Microsoft repos and they're very popular. But McAfee released a report on a new Lua malware loader. And the distribution mechanism was Microsoft repositories for the C++ library manager for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, known as VC package, as well as the STL library. Which isn't the L in STL library? Microsoft C++ standard library. Yeah. So this is, what the heck? It should just be the STL or the C++ standard library. Come on, Lawrence. Do better. The URLs clearly indicate that they belong to the Microsoft repo, but there is no reference to the files in the project source code. And the reason for that is this is not actually source code. This is not something that somebody has injected into real source code. It's not like the SolarWinds attack, where they were able to get credentials and begin using a distribution server to publish malware. This is instead, what's happening is somebody will create a comment and you can upload files as part of a comment. That way you can attach images, you could attach binaries so that the other person can test what you're doing, can try to understand what's happening with your code and why it's going wrong. And that will save the files in github.com/enterprise account name or username /repo name /files, and then give it a numeric ID and a file name. So you see a numeric ID, you see a file name. So this is something that is accessible through this github.com/Microsoft link, but is not related to Microsoft. It's just that the attackers used Microsoft repositories where people are able to leave comments and upload files as part of the comment. And the most interesting part is you can add the file to an unsaved comment. So this is not saved. You don't have to save the comment ever. So there never has to be proof that you saved a comment with the file. You just need the ability to upload the file, and it will give you the URL, and then you can distribute that URL. I started using SourceHut per a Hacker News post long ago to get off mainstream providers. So what is SourceHut, Mike?
SourceHut is like GitHub, but it's you pay for it, and it is a repo that you can use and that you can allow people to look at it. And it is kind of an independent. It's an independent company. Now, obviously, I'm, a Microsoft person as well, but so I started using SourceHut maybe 2 years ago.
Okay.
I don't use it a lot, but like it's a way to not be on like the mainstream one that is probably a vector for a lot of attacks.
Yeah, in this case, it looks like they're taking advantage of a capability to allow people to post files when leaving comments, and I'm wondering if GitHub will make a change to this. I mean, right now, you can disable comments and prevent file upload, but that's not great. Apparently, there are only a couple of repos that actually you see this in the wild. And the tricky part is if you're Microsoft or you're, in this case, HTTP router, you don't really have the ability to see that people have uploaded files associated with that repository as part of a comment if they never saved the comment, if they never committed the comment or asked the question or whatever. So you, as a repo maintainer, don't know, and the only person who would know is the person who uploaded the file, and then they can use that link, post it somewhere else, and as a result possibly get somebody to click on a link because, oh, well, it's a github.com/Microsoft link, so it's got to be good.
We have legit, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what a good solution to this would be. Apparently, GitHub has removed the malware, but still associated with HTTP router and Amy, because they probably don't know. So I do find that to be an interesting challenge of how would GitHub be able to fix this, and I'm not sure that there's a great answer off the top of my head, but fortunately I don't have to be the one to think up the answer. Nonetheless, we're basically at the top of the hour, so I think we should wind things down. Everyone go watch The $6 Million Man or go watch Logan's Run. Go pick something dystopic from the 60s and 70s, and you can check that out.
And maybe for a future one, so speaking of what you just brought up, like a big thing that came up that we were talking about at work, and maybe this would be for a future one, is the XZ lib LZMA SSH server compromise. This is where an
Yep.
open source contributor was kind of faking it for like
Years.
over 2 years.
Yes.
2 years. Okay. Yeah, we could maybe talk about 2 weeks from now, but
We could.
I was reading that with interest because I was like, whoa, that's a long con.
Yeah. And Andrew says hack wow AI, also hack the Gibson. Yeah, the XC Lib hack, I guess I would call it a long-term social engineering hack, but that showed a level of patience that you typically don't see in these attacks, and it was surprising how the whole reason anybody caught it was a researcher, a Postgres developer, running some tests and saying, this connection to SSL or over SSH is taking longer than it should. I wonder what's going on. And diving into the code. And that person happened to be running one of the brand newest distributions of Linux, because for the most part, this didn't make it out to mainstream. Although Ubuntu 24.04 is supposed to drop this week, and there are rumors that it's not going to drop till May. The reason being that they had that version of the library in Ubuntu 24.04.
And it wasn't caught or checked.
Yeah, and so they had to go back and remove it and check everything and make sure or whatever. There was one unstable branch of Debian that had it. There were a couple of branches that had this particular version. So if you're using any type of Linux release from prior to 6 months ago, not a big deal. But if you're running bleeding edge on certain distributions, not the kind of outcome you want to hear with respect to SSH and OpenSSL.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a long story. We'll bring it up again.
Yeah, we'll probably bring it up. We'll talk about it again in 2 weeks. In the meantime, tomorrow, remember the data science and business intelligence. Totally different type of artificial intelligence. Our data science and BI meeting will be tomorrow. I'm going to talk about practical machine learning operations using GitHub Actions and Azure Machine Learning. So stay tuned for that. That'll be at meetup.com/trypass. And then you'll come here just like you do every other time. Look forward to seeing anybody who can make it. And until we see each other in a future video or another Shop Talk episode, everyone, take care.